What is up, guys? It's XX Modern Warfare here, Gamertag Banter Chicken, and welcome back to Budget Gaming PC Build Part 3. So in the last part we looked at actually building the system, and in the part before that we looked at actually ordering all the components and making sure they'd work together. So in this part what we're going to be doing is installing the operating system, getting all the drivers installed, do a couple of things, quite a lot actually in this video. We're also going to be configuring the SSD to boot a little bit faster, so boots into Windows a little faster with the SSD, and we're going to be configuring it so that we point all of our directories that contain lots of files to the hard drive so that we don't fill up space on the SSD. We're also going to install antivirus software and a couple of other programs and software. So to begin with, we're going to have to actually get an operating system. So I'm going to get Windows 7 and I'm going to mount it to a USB. In order to do that, you need a USB stick that's larger than about 4 gigabytes, and you're going to go ahead and open up a program called Rufus, which I'll provide in the description. You select the file system as NTFS, leave the cluster size on default, create a bootable disk using ISO image, and open your ISO. So you need to have a copy of, the Windows operating system you're going to be installing, which you can just download from any torrent site. I'm not condoning piracy in this video, but I'm just saying you can easily just get the operating system from a torrent site and then buy a Windows key for it later on. So that's what we're going to be doing. So go ahead, click continue, and what it's going to do is format the USB drive and install the operating system to the USB, or mount it to the USB so that we can then plug that into our new system and get it installed. So it'll take a while. Just skip to over here. Once it's done, you can close out of Rufus, unplug your USB and plug it into the new computer we're going to be installing it to. So just going to check to make sure everything's there. Got our setup, everything is on there just fine. So what we're going to do is boot up our new computer with the USB stick plugged in, and we are going to head to the boot manager. So when the computer is booting up, we press, I believe it's F8 on this computer for the boot menu. It could be different for other computers, and it will take us to our boot menu, and we can boot from the USB, which is the second one down here. USB SAN disk is the one that we have our operating system mounted to. So we're just going to run it off that, and it will start installing Windows. I'm not going to go over the installation of Windows too in depth because it's quite basic, just like installing a program really. Just click next a few times, enter some basic information. It will install a little bit faster than it would from a disk. USB read and write speeds are quite faster than CDs. So we're going to go ahead and fast forward this a little bit. So we're going to select our language. So for me that would be United States, not United States, would be United Kingdom, English. Set it as starting. Just going to let this run through. We're going to select 64-bit for this machine, definitely 64-bit operating system we want. Accept the license, go to custom. We're going to select our SSD. One thing you want to do is unplug the hard drive before you do this, if you have an SSD, so that all the Windows files will install to the SSD only. If you have a hard drive hooked up, then it will also install some files to the hard drive, which will be a bit awkward. So unplug the hard drive for now until you have the operating system installed. This bit usually takes for ages, but we're just fast forwarding it for quickness. So it will ask you to restart, and once you probably have to restart, I believe it's twice on Windows 7 install. It takes a little while. So the next time it boots up, do not boot from the USB, just let it boot from the SSD, and it will continue its installation process. And then once it has finished, it will also restart the computer a second time. Start Windows back up. And now we can type in a username. So I'm going to type in James as the username because the person I'm going to be selling this PC to, his name is James, so James. I'm not going to put a password, not going to show the product key in this video. I'll put that in later. So I'm just going to click next. So it has a 30-day free trial of Windows. I only install important updates. It's just a personal preference, so I don't get prompted for a Windows update every time I go to shut down or start up the computer. and just let it finalize your settings. So this is going to take a while as well, so we're just fast forwarding it here and get through this, because this bit can take quite some time. And almost done. Preparing your desktop. So when we do get into the desktop, the next step is to install any missing drivers, and with a custom built PC there's definitely going to be some missing drivers. So what we're going to do is head into the device manager first of all. You can see that the display drivers are not set either, which is why it's in 800 by 600. So yeah, basically what we're going to do is check the device manager. So we click start, we right click on computer, and we go to manage, and then we head into system tools and select device manager. And you can see we've got 3 missing drivers: Ethernet controller, universal serial bus, and unknown device. So unknown device is going to be our video driver, most likely our video card. Ethernet controller is LAN, universal serial bus is USB 3. So I'm going to download all these drivers from my other computer, transfer them over using a USB stick. You can get the drivers from your motherboard website, which for me is Asus, because we have an Asus motherboard. And the driver for the graphics card is AMD, so we head over to AMD's website for that to get the drivers. So I've downloaded the LAN driver, got the chipset driver for the USB, we've got a USB driver separate for the USB, and we've got the AMD drivers as well for our graphics card. So I just transferred those over from my own computer to this computer using a USB stick. I'll just quickly show you the Asus website I got. Well, here's the AMD website that I got the graphics card drivers from, and here's the Asus website, drivers and tools. And I basically downloaded those drivers and copied them over using a USB. I've also downloaded core temp just to check the CPU CPU temperatures are okay. And we're going to go ahead and install the first driver. So yeah, core temp's an important one as well, just to check to make sure that the temperatures are all good and we installed the heatsink properly. So anyway, for the drivers, we just start up the Asus.exe and let it go ahead and do its installing. So USB 3 driver here, and then we've got the LAN driver as well to install. And then we'll probably install the graphics card driver last, because that's probably the biggest driver. It'll take the longest to install. Okay, LAN driver now. So just head into LAN folder, run the Asus setup, click next, install, wait for this to install, and then we'll go back into device manager and check to make sure that the majority of these drivers have been installed and we have been installing the correct drivers. Because if we install a driver we think is the right one and it turns out it still says that that device is missing, then obviously it's the incorrect driver. So we'll just double check and make sure we've got everything correct. Yep, there we go, device manager. Only one left, unknown device, which I'm pretty sure is going to be our display drivers. So one other thing, guys, that I need to address straight away, because this is annoying me. Whenever I get a new computer and I try and run something as administrator, I get this annoying user account control box. I need to get rid of this before I continue with anything else, because it's really damn annoying and I hate computers that have this enabled. So this really annoying box that says, are you absolutely sure you want to do this? So we need to get rid of that straight away. It's just a nuisance. So if you head into the control panel, go into System and Security, Action Center, expand the security box and scroll down to User Account Control. You click Change Settings and you drag this bar down to Never Notify, and that should be the last user account control box you'll ever see, as long as you keep that disabled. So now, for example, if I try and run the CMD as administrator, it just opens straight away and just gets rid of that nuisance of those boxes there. So anyway, back to what we were doing. Finally, we've got the graphics card driver to install. So again, I'm going to speed this up because it's going to take forever, because it doesn't just have to install the driver, it has to install the Catalyst Control Center and a bunch of other things. So we're just going to leave this to do its thing, fast forward it. And when it has installed, it will prompt for a restart, and once you have restarted, it will then be using the drivers properly and we'll get a full display in 1080p instead of 800 by 600. We should get the transparent arrow theme as well once this has been installed. So we're just going to accept, just say yes to everything and let it install. Check the log, everything seems fine. And click finish and it'll say reboot, so we'll just say yes to reboot the system. Again, we'll just fast forward this. And we're back. So what we're going to do, just check, we can see it's now in 1920 by 1080. You may need to full screen the video because it does seem like it's zoomed out quite a bit. But that's just that now running in 1080p. It's got the proper display drivers from the graphics card all set up. And that should be all our drivers installed now. So one other thing that we're going to have to do is plug back in our hard drive, reboot the system, and actually add it in here. So it needs to be formatted. We have our 1 terabyte hard drive that we added and we've plugged it back in, but it needs formatting. So to do that, we go back into computer, right click, go to manage, and instead of System Tools Device Manager, we now go into disk management, which is in that little box on the left. Underneath storage we have disk management. That is the next thing we're going to have to go into here. And we can see that unallocated space is our 1 terabyte hard drive. So you're just going to right click in the space and create a new simple volume. You just click next and next, assign a drive letter to it and click next. I'm just going to leave it on F. File system, NTFS, volume label, you can call this whatever you want. I don't have very good imagination, so I just call it hard drive 1. A lot of people call it mass storage or data. It's up to you what you want to call it, and it will format it, and done. Really easy. And we've now got our hard drive all set up now as well. So now we have our hard drive set up. The next thing is to point all of our folders that are going to contain lots of files, junk files, or even not junk files, but just files that are going to take up a lot of space. We want to direct those to the hard drive rather than filling up space on our SSD. So something like the desktop, maybe, downloads definitely, maybe documents, music, pictures and videos. I all want to direct that to the hard drive rather than the SSD, because that's where lots of files are going to be stored, and we don't want all that space taken up on the SSD because the SSD is only 120 gigabytes, and some of that's taken up from the operating system as well. So we're going to have to change the location of the desktop, downloads, documents, all those to the hard drive instead of the SSD. So in order to do that, what we have to do is we need to head into local disk C. We go into users, which is where all of that's stored, then James, or your user account name, and we've got our desktop and everything else that's stored in here. So we're going to basically right click on the desktop, which is all the files that are in here are on our desktop. So what we're going to have to do is basically right click the desktop, select properties, and select the location tab, and we're just going to change the location to the hard drive, which is the F drive. So we change C to F, and I'm also going to delete users and James because there's only going to be one user account on here anyway, so we're just going to put it in the root of the hard drive. You could put it in a folder if you want, or leave it C users, user account name, desktop. It's going to ask to move all the files that are currently in there, so we're just going to say yes, so that it moves all the files from their current directory on the C drive to the F drive. And that's it. Done. So all these files on their desktop are now stored on the hard drive rather than the SSD. So that gives us more space, and it's less likely that we're going to use up all our space on our SSD as quickly now that we have that. So we're going to do the same with downloads. It's basically exactly the same thing, so I'm just going to pretty much go ahead and fast forward it. So we just go and point it to the F drive for downloads. And we're going to do the same with documents. We're going to do all the ones that are going to contain quite large files. So, you know, you may store quite a lot of things in documents. That's why I'm doing documents. Definitely pictures. Picture files can take up quite a lot of space, especially if they're uncompressed. And music even as well. And of course videos, which take up a lot of space also. So all of those are now pointed towards the hard drive instead of the SSD. Alright, so finally we're going to just quickly install core temp to make sure the CPU temperatures are right. And whenever you're installing a program and you want it to go to the hard drive, you just change the location from C to F, or whichever drive letter represents the hard drive, and you can just install it to the hard drive. So we've got core temp on the hard drive, and by checking the temperatures we can see that all 6 cores seem to be working fine, and the temperatures are totally fine as well. Yeah, around about the 30s or 20s is what we'd expect when the system is idling. Not bad at all. So that proves that our heatsink and everything was installed perfectly fine. Should have probably checked that to begin with actually. But yeah, anyway. So final thing we're going to do, or not final thing, but another thing we're going to do is try and make the SSD boot quicker. We want the operating system to boot faster on the SSD. So in order to do this, we're going to change a couple of settings, as you know, the computer's really set up to boot from a hard drive, and we need to set it up to boot from the SSD so we can boot a bit faster. So we're going to open the start menu and type in advanced system settings, which will bring you here. You can click on properties. One thing you can do is disable aero peak and transparent glass. I personally leave them enabled because I like the transparency that Windows 7 has on the taskbar and on the windows that you open. I personally like that, but you can disable it if you want a tiny bit more performance for your SSD to boot a little faster. I mean, we're talking probably milliseconds of difference here, but with everything combined we can make a difference. So virtual memory is another one. If you click change on virtual memory, uncheck this box and select no paging file, then that will disable virtual memory. Virtual memory, I would only recommend disabling it if you have probably 10 gigs or more of RAM, because you're never going to use that much RAM. If you have 16 gigs of RAM, that's fine. Maybe if you have 8 gigs of RAM, I would leave virtual memory on, because what virtual memory does is when you have full space of RAM, you're using up all your RAM, then it will create virtual memory, so we use hard disk space to store more information. And if you have that disabled and you use up all your RAM, then you're going to probably crash the computer. But if you have more than 10 gigs, it's very unlikely you're going to use up all that RAM anyway. So you may as well just disable virtual memory if you have more than 10 gigs. I'm leaving it enabled because this computer only has 8 gigs of RAM. So I'm not going to use that up. So definitely don't want to enable that. Another thing we can do is configure our system protection. I personally don't think it's necessary to have system protection. So you click the button to turn off system protection on an SSD. SSDs are much less likely to develop faults than a hard drive is, because an SSD has no moving parts. It's not mechanical like a hard drive, so it's very unlikely. So I personally don't feel the need for system protection on the hard drive. So that's another way, just disable that. One other thing we're going to do is head into msconfig and head into boot and select no GUI boot, so you don't get the starting Windows logo that starts up on when you boot up the computer. Timeout, make sure that's set to 0 seconds as well. And yeah, that just helps the computer boot a little faster as well. Another thing that we can go ahead and do is head into services. So in services, what you can do is check the box to hide all Microsoft services, because you want to keep those enabled, and then just disable any other services that you don't think need to be running on the computer. That's the same in startup. Go ahead and disable anything that you don't want running in startup. Because this is a new system, there's not really anything that we need to disable in there. So we can click OK. We're not going to restart yet because we're going to do one more thing, and that is we're going to disable hibernation, which kind of gets set up or configured when you start up the computer. So what we're going to do is go into CMD, right click, run it as administrator, and we're going to type in power CFG space -H space off. And that just basically turns off hibernation mode, which you're not going to need on a desktop computer anyway. So yeah, I just disable it, and that's that. So that's pretty much all we can do on the operating system side of things to make the SSD perform a little faster, a little better, or not necessarily perform faster, but just let the operating system boot a little bit quicker. But we can also do something in the BIOS. So we boot up the computer and we head into the BIOS with the delete key. We can do a couple of things here. If we head into boot, which on the tabs at the top, we head into the boot tab, we select boot device priority. We want to select the SSD to be our primary boot device. So we want the SSD as first boot device. So we select first boot device, change it to the SSD so that is the first thing that the computer looks for to try and boot the operating system from. It straight away looks to boot from the SSD first, rather than checking other devices and then booting from the SSD. So that will give us a tiny little bit faster boot times. Hard disk drives, we just want to make sure that the SSD is also set to the first. And that is basically it. We'll go into boot and we'll check quick boot as well. Make sure quick boot is enabled if it isn't already. Full screen logo is another one. You want to disable that. It just stops the little Asus or motherboard manufacturer's screen when the computer boots up. If you disable it, it'll change it to like the American Megatrends. This doesn't necessarily improve speed on some computers, but with others it can. So it's worth disabling full screen logo for that. And then you can exit. So we'll check to see how fast it boots a bit later on at the end, and we'll be able to see the difference. But another thing that we definitely need is some antivirus software. There's no excuse not to have some antivirus software on the computer. I'm just going to install Avast, which is a free antivirus that we can register for a year, and you know, it's worth having. Once this person gets the computer, when I send it off to him, he can change the antivirus for a paid for or better one if he wants. But it's worth just installing some antivirus protection in the first place. So we're going to just go ahead and install Avast and configure it so that we are registered for a year. So we just click the register button at the top. We select standard protection, which is free. We've got to put in a first name, last name, and email. So I just use 10-minute mail for this to generate a disposable email address. And pop that in the email, and then just put a fake name. First name is James, and it legitimately is going to someone called James, but his last name is not Hunter. That's just a made-up last name. So I'll just register with that. And we have free protection for a year if we click stay with basic protection. And that's it. We have a free protection for a year, and after that year is up, we can get another year's free protection. So that's pretty handy. So we now have some antivirus software, and our system is fully secure. Okay, so we can go ahead and delete all of these drivers that we've now got installed. I'm going to remove Dropbox. That's an add-on that Avast installs. I forgot to uncheck that. And we'll empty recycle bin, get all those drivers out of the way, and we have them installed. Okay, so another thing, when I'm setting up people's computers for the first time, I always install LibreOffice. It's an optional thing you can install. I personally like it because essentially it's like Microsoft Office, only free. And it contains pretty much all the stuff that Microsoft Office contains, like, you know, you've got your writer, which is basically Word, you've got your presentation, which is PowerPoint, you've got your database and spreadsheet, which is Excel and Access. A lot of people require that kind of software on their computers, so I just install good old LibreOffice, which is just a free version, essentially. Pretty much, as you can see there, that's the writer, which is just like Microsoft Word, not much difference, and it's completely free. So rather than getting Microsoft Word, you can just install LibreOffice for free. One other thing that I also install is CCleaner, which is a handy little application for when you've been using your computer for a while and you've built up a lot of internet cookies and lots of internet history that's been stored, and maybe slowing down your web browser and slowing down your system a little bit. This software is really handy for that. It just basically cleans all of that out, deletes all of that system information, gets rid of it all, gets rid of all your history, gets rid of all your cookies, and it can also check the registry for corrupt or not non-needed registry keys and deletes them as well, or fixes them. So yeah, pretty handy software. So I'll just check now. Click Analyze, and you can see there's just a few because this is a new system. And then you can run the cleaner, which will just get rid of all those temporary internet files. So that's it. That's kind of the core software that I usually have on the system. And I think we are pretty much done now. So one final thing I'll do is I will start up the system from scratch, and we will see how long it takes to boot. So we get the American Megatrends logo now that we have disabled the full screen logo, the Asus one, and we get no starting windows because we have disabled GUI boot, so it boots a little bit quicker. So we go straight from a black screen into the welcome message, and now we've logged in. So that's a pretty fast boot time, I would say. And remember, this is not a lightning fast SSD, this is quite a cheap SSD. It was about £44, the Kingston 120GB SSD now. So with those configurations that we made, we have managed to get the boot time quite quick, quite a lot faster than it was before. And that's it. So I know I rushed through a lot of that because there was a lot to cover. I wasn't wanting to split everything up into more parts. I think 3 parts is enough. But that's it, guys. That is part 3. We are done. We have installed the system. We've got everything set up. We've got antivirus software. We've got LibreOffice. We've got our CCleaner. Core temp to check our temperatures of our CPU. We've got the operating system all set up and installed, all the drivers installed. We've got our key files like our desktop and our documents and downloads all directing to the hard drive so that we don't use up space on the SSD. We've got the SSD configured to boot faster so we can boot into Windows quicker with that SSD as well. And yeah, overall that is pretty much everything. All sorted. So all I have to do is package up this computer and send it off, and the person who I'm sending this to, his YouTube channel is moddedxname. He should be on my featured channels list, so you can go ahead and check him out. I believe he made a video a while back about this. Yeah, I'm kind of late in actually releasing this video, but anyway guys, thank you guys for watching. Go ahead, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, comment if you have any questions, and yeah, I'll hopefully see you guys next time. Don't forget to check out part 1 and part 2 if you haven't already. Yeah.